This is the meeting of the Transportation Committee. Today is Monday, August 28th. First item on our agenda today is consideration of the minutes from the August 14th meeting. If there's no additions or corrections, we'll consider a motion to approve those.
Move approval of the August 14th meeting minutes.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, next up we have a presentation by Colin Alexander on Reconnecting Communities Neighborhood Grant Program.
Good afternoon. My name is Colin Alexander. I serve as Senior Planner with the Birmingham Department of Transportation. For you is a standard grant application resolution. We've done several of these recently with you guys. We are going to apply for a Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods grant program. This is one of the federal grant transportation programs that came out of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. The project that we are applying for is to convert 4th Avenue North from one-way traffic to two-way traffic from 9th Street North all the way to 24th Street North through our downtown core. Converting one-ways to two-ways has been a goal of a number of plans the city has sponsored for the last decade and a half. City Center Master Plan, the Comp Plan, the North Side South Side Framework Plan, Northwest Quadrant Plan all point to converting our downtown one-ways to two-ways. And in looking at what should be our first project to do that, 4th Avenue North jumped out as a prime opportunity. There's several reasons for that. Most of our one-ways were designed in pairs coming on and off of interstate exit ramps. So you think of, for instance, 5th and 6th North, you're coming off of US 31, you're going back to I-65. 4th Avenue North does not connect to the interstates. It dead ends at 24th Street North, and it connects to two-way traffic already at 9th Street North. It does not have an actual pair. 5th and 6th are a pair, 3rd and 2nd are a pair, Richard Arrington is 22nd, etc. But 4th is really an orphan street in that network. It's also, when you look at it, the exact center of the downtown grid. There are 8 blocks to the north going towards Reverend Abraham Woods, and 8 blocks to the south going to Morris Avenue. So it made sense from a geographic standpoint to look at that. It also makes sense because the 4th Avenue North, of course, is the home of the 4th Avenue Business District. And a lot of studies on recent one-way to two-way conversions nationally have shown that this is a huge boon for local businesses. Instead of creating a fast get out, in and out kind of through traffic where cars may or may not stop for local businesses, two-way traffic provides an opportunity for people to slow down, to come from both directions, and to actually come to a place and try to come and shop at these businesses. And so it's a way to support our historic Black business district. So that's the application. We're applying for $15 million, which is what we expect that this project would cost. We're talking about 15 blocks. Signalized intersections are very expensive to retrofit, and that's going to be a big part of the cost. This overlaps with our RAISE grant. So the RAISE grant that we just won, building a trail along 16th Street and also out towards Legion Field, also continues that trail along 4th Avenue North between 16th Street and 20th Street. So we can work on the road improvements with this grant while the RAISE grant works on streetscape improvements through the 4th Avenue Business District that we want to achieve for place-based economic development. It also, because 9th Street and the downtown Smithfield is in the Choice neighborhood area, it's overlaying incentive on top of incentive. So that it's really what the feds want to see out of this bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is showing that we're not just having a whack-a-mole approach to our grant applications, but we're really building on investment. So we think that this is a really competitive grant. The administration has committed to a $2 million match. That is under the typical 80-20% match that you normally see. However, this entire project is in an area of persistent poverty. So we actually don't have to have a match. We are giving a match that we feel is competitive and makes us more competitive in this grant application round.
Okay. So the commitment is $2 million.
From the city.
20% of 15 million would be, you know.
A little more than that.
Yeah, a little
Correct.
more than that, right.
So this is our way of showing the feds that while we're not required to do that, we are committed to this project and putting skin in the game. makes us a much more competitive application on the national level.
Okay. One question, so has planning and engineering for this project been done, or would that be a part of the project?
No, that would be a part of the project. Our consultant is going to do some 10% designs in the application period, just so that we really know the scale of what we're looking at, because it is complicated, and a lot of that urban fabric is very dense and complicated if we're going to change it. But true designs would be a part of the grant application if awarded. And we are on a compressed timeline, so the grant is due September 28th. So we're hitting the ground running, trying to get this in on time, but we feel really good about our application.
Excellent. So I assume the city center master plan also calls for 4th Avenue North to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does. And the Regional Planning Commission, back in 2009, did a study on converting one-ways to two-ways, and prioritizing and 4th was one of the prime targets for us to look at.
Okay.
I will say too, the other point of reason for this too is the intersection of 17th Street and 4th Avenue North, right in the heart of the 4th Avenue Business District, where the Jazz Hall of Fame is. We have a number of high rates of wrecks at that location. Both of those are one-way streets. And when you collide at a high rate of speed, you're just going to go into the Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame, which we're spending a lot of money to really make as a viable cultural asset for the city. And so converting this to two-way will help alleviate that. Not eliminate it, but would help alleviate that problem as well.
Say the problem again?
At 17th Street and 4th Avenue, both are one-ways, right? And you have one-ways lead to higher speeds. It's more designed more like an intersection, right? And so when you have really fast traffic coming here and really fast traffic coming here, they collide. The natural place for them to end up is in the Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame, if that makes sense. So by having two-way traffic, you're going to not eliminate the accident occurrences, but you're going to have slower rates of speed on 4th, and you're going to have two-way traffic that may reduce the number of crashes that go into the Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame.
How many crashes have gone into it?
It's been a lot.
It's a lot.
Even since Chair. Ever since the renovations, we had to install ballers out front of the Jazz Hall of Fame just for that one issue. Before the total renovation, we had a car actually go inside the Jazz Hall of Fame.
Gotta keep a tight lid on things, right?
It was on the news.
And it's probably been worse since the completion of the interstate project, because 17th Street is now the main entrance
Yep.
into downtown from the west. So
I'm guessing is this submission supposed to be 15?
yeah, so some of the documents,
When we originally put together the submission, we were estimating a $10 million project, but since our consultant came out and walked with it, we realized we needed to up that application request to 15. So there was an updated submission that was sent to you guys, but it was later than when the agenda was posted. So yes, the resolution, which will be on council committee tomorrow, is corrected. It says the 15 million that we're applying for with the $2 million match.
So that's why Chaz is a little short on this one. Changed it late.
We're only worried about the match portion of it.
so question as it relates to the MPO, I guess for these types of funding opportunities, that's not part of the federal formula dollars or anything that come in for TIP and TAP and all those other acronyms of funding sources.
So this is, it's its own competitive grant program. So it's separate from the grant programs like CMAQ, our congestion mitigation and quality, or TAP, the Transportation Alternative Program. In terms of the TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, that's basically the overall program that the NPO manages of all the different projects that are going on in the metro area. The feds do want this project to be added to the tip, and so the MPO, just because of how processes line up, the MPO is going to provide us with a letter committing that if we are awarded, it will be put into the tip. So that should service the Fed's requirements in the grant application for that.
Does this match ARPA dollars?
No.
No.
We're looking at our fuel tax, our funds, and our gas tax funds that we receive from the state. No general fund dollars.
Sounded like you wanted to say something else. You stopped yourself.
No general fund dollars.
No, I said ARPA.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome, sir.
Chief.
So this is just a resolution
For us to go
for the
that
council to authorize
Nice.
applying for the funds.
Because it requires the mayor's signature, so he
Right.
cannot sign anything without council's authorization.
And that resolution needs to be included in our application package.
At the same time, the council is committing to the is it 20% or $2 million?
It's $2 million.
$2 million.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's the cap. It's not, once we discovered, we originally had requested the 20% match when we were asking 10, but once we realized it was gonna be more, we decided to ask for no more than 2 million. knowing that
okay,
there's-
so the resolution needs to be corrected because it says, one thing it says is this grant requires matching funds, and then, the 20%, so,
So the reason it says it requires matching funds is because the federal guidelines do require it. It's just the fact that we are in an area of persistent poverty, so we are exempt from that.
okay. I
So
got you.
that is correct. I'll double check to make sure that the resolution that's on council for tomorrow is correct. I know Attorney Sheffield was working on making sure the language was up to date last week, so
Okay,
I'll double check with him.
all right. Any further questions?
Yeah, so, but we're asking for 15 million.
Are you thinking we could get our 2 million back?
No, I'm just trying, so,
Yeah.
theoretically, we're asking them to give us 13. We took the
That's
3.
correct.
Yeah.
You guys keep looking for money, guys.
Got a motion?
I make a motion that we submit this to the full council for a vote.
All right. So we got motion second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion passes.
Thank you.
New and old business, before you leave, Colin. So I think this is true every city council district. We are constantly get questions about traffic calming. So I know that it's been asked about a lot in this committee. But I think it's time that we kind of do a deeper dive on, now that we're having some transition in the folks who are handling that program within BDOT. I think it would be appropriate for the council to kind of get an overview of, kind of where we are, what's been accomplished, what projects are in the queue, what does the queue look like?
Limitations.
What does the process look like?
Limitations.
Because
Just a large area.
it's, let me back up. So I've said this a million times, and people ought to be aware of this if they've been in Birmingham for a little while. For the longest time, these requests fell on deaf ears. The answer was no. Forwards, backwards, sideways, upside down, it was always no. And so now that we have a way to yes, it's, we've unleashed the tidal wave.
So to that point, because I know I'm glad Mr. Fowler's here too to support both our comments, hopefully. We understand that, you know, now it's a path forward to yes, but it's setting the expectation of what that yes looks like. I know everybody, they want speed humps, they want something that looks like a speed cushion, speed bump, something that slows it down, we get that. But as Colin has always noted, and Mr. Fowler's always noted, that street calming is more than just an apparatus. It can be a light, it can be a signal, it can be something that deters people from speeding. So we really want to make sure that we set the expectations of what can be done when it comes to street calming, because the expectation that the neighborhoods want is something physical, something big, something, a monstrosity that's going to be in somebody's neighborhood. So I think allow us to put our collective heads together and at least brief the mayor, because I think, well, as you said, we do need to give you guys an update and let you at least know what the process is, so when you go to the neighborhood meetings, y'all are very well, you know, versed in what y'all are saying and what,
Yeah.
that we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah.
If I can follow up with that, Chief, yeah, I mean, we think we need some time to kind of, as a department and as leadership, you know, kind of make sure we're giving the council the information that they want. I will say that now that we have our two new engineers on staff who are helping us stand up the program again, we do have an internal draft of the one-page document that's been requested a number of times. We've just been strapped with capacity. So let us work through that review process internally, and we'll be getting you that so you can go to neighborhoods and you have at least a quick one-pager that people can glance over, and then we'll circle back with leadership to set up something larger to kind of discuss in detail.
We can either shoot for your next committee meeting, but since it touches everybody, it can be the next committee at all in September. Based off of, I know that's around CBC time, but whatever works for the council.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's something relevant to everybody, so committee of the whole would be a good venue. In any case, I just wanted to put that request out there. So
It's well received, trust me. We're hear you.
one thing that, just a tiny little thing that I'll add on to that, just to make sure that you guys are thinking along this direction. So one of the things that a lot of folks don't think about when they think about traffic calming is street trees. So in those circumstances where some sort of device in the street may not be the best solution, making sure that we include things like street trees, which most people wouldn't think of as a traffic calming measure, making sure that's sort of in the recommendations. And that's something that, you know, the neighborhood or private property owners can potentially take on as a project themselves. Granted, you know, trees under power lines cause all kinds of problems, you know, they can crack the sidewalk. I mean, it is also not the best solution all of the time, but just as long as, you know, those types of things are in our repertoire, you know.
No, we completely agree. I mean, even another example of that is road diets or bike lanes are also effective in terms of traffic calming, depending on the context. Well, it's a much more complex document than the one-pager that I think is more effective at community meetings. If you go on our Department of Transportation website, you can find our traffic calming policy. And in that document, there is a list of example of traffic calming practices, so that you can kind of look through and see what are some other things that other cities are using for traffic calming. But as a department, I think you're exactly right. From the very beginning, while we understand that there are roads in Birmingham, you have long straightaways on narrow roads, you know, speed cushions are probably the most appropriate option. We've wanted to make sure that this isn't a speed bump policy, it's a traffic calming policy, and that's the full gamut of what's possible.
Okay. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that request out there. I know the members of this committee are definitely interested, but I feel like my other colleagues on the council get the same questions that we do. So I know that they would be interested as well. Also, following up from the last Transportation Committee meeting, we didn't get submissions for the Class Tran or BJCTA agreements. Any progress to report there?
So, you want to speak on that, what we just shared?
Yeah, do I need to come up there?
Yeah, for the microphones.
Hello, everybody. I'm James Fowler. I serve as the Director of the City's Department of Transportation. We've sent the draft language to the Transit Authority, and so we're waiting for them to get back to us with their revisions to that. I know their director was out of town kind of during the last time period, so it may take her just a second to get that language back to us, but she does have it. And I know Glenn Dickerson with them has it as well. So we're just waiting on their response at this point.
Okay,
And I'm pretty sure they have to send it to their legal counsel, just, that's,
right.
what's his name? That guy.
Yeah,
It's right.
Courtney?
Courtney French, yeah.
Yeah.
Attorney French,
Yep.
yes.
And
We'll have it ready by at least, I gave them an end date that no matter what, we're gonna submit it back to the committee as soon as possible.
well, I know that they're motivated because there's a check that's eventually, this has to be done so that they can get a check. So they're motivated. What about Class Trans? Same
So,
thing?
It's the same thing, but I think theirs is not as robust as we anticipated BJCTA. Like, we can add the language that we discussed in committee about the reporting structure and move on that, if that's up to you, but I don't think it's as robust as it is for the BJCTA.
Okay, well, we'll just,
We
I mean, if it's ready for the next committee meeting, we'll handle
Yes,
it then.
we'll have both of them by the next.
Okay, all right. Any new or old business y'all want to bring up?
Yeah, I just want to push back on the chief. He called, I think, the speed cushion, the friendly neighborhood speed cushion's a monstrosity. And we'll say, no, but it has been the most effective tool that we have. I think that's where that kind of, everybody leans toward those because they are effective. And I guess we've had them in long enough now to know what the downsides are, if we're seeing any unintended consequences. But, I mean, you literally have a speeding problem one day, and as soon as they're down, you no longer have a speeding problem. And so I would definitely like to, at some point, I guess, hear if you feel there's some cons, what those are. Because I don't want to assume
sir.
by your language that you believe they're cons.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm going to a neighborhood meeting tonight, and they will be asking me about 2 locations. And,
I think there was if I remember this correctly, there was a speed table installed on the street that runs right in front of the West Precinct. And the adjacent resident had some issues and some pretty incredible claims, like increased emissions or something and some health impacts or something like that.
you can probably argue fewer cars come down the street.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, stuff that you would think that would be viewed uniformly as a positive, somebody will find something to complain about. Yeah,
We got you.
yeah.
We do owe y'all that update, so.
I've seen Chaz's complaint folder, so
Yeah,
know where he keeps
I mean, noise is the other thing I can think of
I
is,
have heard noise.
Once something gets quiet, something else gets louder, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody told me that now that they slow down on the street, they can kind of see the other issues with code enforcement and things like that, so. It's all connected, guys, it's all connected.
yeah.
And I just want to piggyback off what Councilor Lewis and Councilor Quinn said. We do get hit a lot. So somebody just asked me about Castleberry Way, and of course UW Clemens and 7th Avenue and Wildman. I guess for me, it's more like an educational moment, like people really need to know what step A, B, C, D, and finalization, how do we get there? So I think people are missing it because they feel that, you know, they see people speeding in communities and they think that this is something that can happen very quickly, and it can't. And so I just think that keeping the communities educated on how this process goes, and as Councilor Quinn stated, the update where we with those that are already in the pipeline. So, because people want, you know, they do want to know, like, where are we? We've heard this, you know, we get it all the time.
All right, and now I'm gonna crack open a big steaming pile of
Do it.
stinky issue. So a couple of years ago, we put money in the budget to make sure that BPD had equipment to do traffic enforcement. So at the time, in the entirety of the Birmingham Police Department, there were 5 radar guns, and they didn't even know if they could put their hands on all 5 of them, or if all 5 of them worked. So Chief Smith at the time added to the budget for 100 radar guns. So I would say even after that, I have had 0 complaints of constituents coming to me about getting traffic citations. Nobody's asked me to ever try and fix their ticket or anything of that nature. Not that I would entertain such a request, but you know, what the point that I'm getting around to is that I did recently have a Birmingham resident get in contact with me about, you know, traffic calming, and you know, the issue arose of the police department, you know, doing some enforcement in that area. And, you know, the resident reported that, you know, they have never had they've never observed any police officers trying to do traffic enforcement in the area where the complaint is. So, I don't care, you know, if our streets were designed appropriately and, you know, actually designed to reduce the speed of traffic. I don't care if anybody gets you know, if they never write a traffic citation again for speeding, but we're not going to get those streets, you know, anytime in the next few decades, probably. So I'm just curious. I know something completely different might happen when it gets to municipal court, but I wonder what traffic enforcement looks like for BPD.
Good question.
I'll try and put this in order. So to your inquiry about the purchase, that was taken care of. We actually got an update from Chief Thurman and his leadership team last week about that, just because that actually came up out of nowhere. That I think the comment was made that we had 2, and that has been resolved. Enforcement, yes, I think they are working on that portion of it without trying to get into the tactics of how they do those type of, you know, speed enforcements just based off of some parameters that we have going on internally, but they are working on that. If you just give me that particular intersection that you have that issue in, we'll see what they can do about having more visibility there.
Okay. It's, yeah, it's a bigger issue. I mean, my response is that it's a much bigger issue than one intersection. Like, you know, I've lived here in the city of Birmingham 23 years, and I've, you know, like most other people, run a few stop signs and red lights and exceeded the speed limit, you know.
Allegedly.
Careful what you
You can stop this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I don't wanna go down.
I've been pulled over once for expired registration tag, you know.
So you flaunted the local traffic laws and no one's ever. I do want to add to that line of thinking though, and I think it would be good for, or I would like to see Department of Transportation maybe gather some stats and things around what an uptick in enforcement could lead to as it relates to whether it's traffic accidents, complaints, need for speed cushions. I think some of those things could go a long way in our efforts down in Montgomery around automated traffic enforcement. Because like I said, we need as many solutions that we can get that don't require more manpower or more money.
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity there. And I think y'all may have some data that could be helpful when talking to the delegation around why we should have this in some form or fashion.
I mean, I like that idea, and perhaps, you know, one of the most compelling cases might be built around crash data. And so I feel pretty confident, like
Theater.
17th and 4th Avenue North, you know, if we had, you know, some understanding of what the crash data look like, you know, perhaps we could use that in our conversations to our state legislature.
We can work on providing that data.
Okay.
Okay. Like that hurt you to say it. Like it, that was painful.
All right, anything else we want to get off our chest while we're having a hold of Julie? Did you get a hold of Julie?
Appreciate your presence, Chief.
Couple of things I wanted to ask you about, Julie. We have several revocations of CPNCs that are on the council agenda tomorrow.
Right.
Can you give me just a little bit of background on that?
Okay, that, Julie Bernard, Office of the City Attorney, those items, they are required to keep insurance on file with the city clerk, and the city clerk is supposed to get notice 30 days before those policies expire. So what they usually do is give notice to the person and tell them if they don't have that information, the insurance updated within the 30 days, that it will be going to the council for revocation of the CPNC. And this has been, I think, the clerk's office has been going through a lot of transition with people moving, positions and everything. So they're catching, they've caught up on some issues. And I spoke with the clerk's office on Friday, and I think there are two that they've gotten the proof of insurance. We know there's one that I think the woman has said she's decided not to be in the business, and they've asked her to send a letter to that effect. But so they've put them on the agenda, but I'm not sure. I'll need to talk with them about, putting them on the agenda if we've got the proof of insurance, but tomorrow the council should get an update of which ones have gotten their insurance, in place, and the ones that haven't, then usually those are revoked, and they can't come back, later with insurance. We can reinstate it. I think the ordinance allows for that, but it's,
So the timing of all of these coming together is just because of the annual
Yes.
notification?
So the clerk's office keeps a tickler file basically of like when the council approves a CPNC, and then they know a year from that date, if they haven't received the renewal, then they automatically put it on the council
Right.
agenda for revocation. And so another thing that Julie didn't know, Attorney Bernard didn't know, mail can be slow sometimes, and a lot of the stuff comes in my office randomly, it comes direct to the clerk's office or OCA, and it's kind of like, hey, I see it, and I'm literally walking it down to the clerk's office, like, hey, I know this is good for the agenda, so
Yeah.
that person can make sure they have their CPNC insurance.
we've in the past had, like the morning off council
Yeah,
meeting.
it just
if
comes
they show
down
up
randomly.
with it,
Yeah.
or it comes in,
So something related that I want to bring to your attention is Detective Pitts has been out on medical leave, and we have had a business owner contacting us who's having some issues, getting past that part of the process. So
You'll send it to.
And they are looking, I had a conversation this morning, with, Ron Jackson and with the,
good.
so they are just trying to catch up and understand whether they call to clarify, from me something, whether they needed to do something or not, trying to clarify the process, so
Okay.
they're working on trying to get that
Okay.
backlog moved.
And lastly, we have public hearings tomorrow on revisions to our parking ordinances and to separately towing ordinance. I know that we've been getting some last minute feedback, so without, I don't necessarily want to get into the details of that right now, but based on this last minute feedback that's coming in, what's your assessment in terms of where the ordinance is in relation to, how many tweaks are we going to have to make to satisfy some of these concerns that are coming in late in the process?
Yeah.
And can you do those and the council will still take, an action on the ordinances tomorrow? Or, I'm just kind of get a sense of, are we close or do we need some more time?
I think without telling council what to do.
Right.
I think you would probably, obviously want to go ahead and have the hearing.
Mhm.
I have anticipated, and I talked with Ms. Argo and with Attorney Rutledge, that we pay attention to what council is doing, because there may be some things you may say, let's take that out. And there may be some things that you say, we may want to reword this, or you hear something, depending on what it is. I have said, we may want to ask you to delay taking action, because I've been in that position before, running back to my office and trying to make the last minute changes and going, what did they really say? So if there are changes, but we did have some feedback, but we just actually came, from a meeting with a couple of towing companies, and there are some things actually the things that we really need to address are some things that have been in there, not any of the changes specifically that we've made, but things that were in the 2013 ordinance. One related to insurance, some things that we need to look at and probably need to review. So we may need some time on some of these. There's one in the state in the intervening years has changed the Abandoned Motor Vehicle Act and the auto theft provisions in the certificate of title part of the state code. And one of the procedures that we had in there, referred to an old procedure, sending mail notice and everything. So we're going to look at that, maybe update that part. We were asked to look at that. So there are several things in their feedback. I think they were going to give a little more. We've got their comments in writing, but they were going to go back and do a few tweaks and send those to us this evening, so we can forward those to the council.
Okay.
And, I have been sending those comments to you as chair of this committee,
Right.
and then to the council
I know-
administrators to make sure they get to everybody.
Right. I know one of the comments from one individual was, a dozen pages long, so, yeah, lots of things to consider. And it's, I'm glad they're commenting. I actually had some folks contact me, and I thank them for, even though the public hearing is tomorrow, I thank them for being in front of a vote and not having to come back and, a few weeks later after we thought we were finished, and having to address it again, so anyway.
Yeah, so that, so that is an option that the council has, is to, have the hearing and then delay final action, if we want to consider some of these comments that have come in.
Okay,
Well, we would need to re-advertise if we make substantive changes, or?
No, this is different than a zoning action. We usually have to re-advertise if it's zoning, because the zoning is very strict and follows statutory requirements. This would be something, that the council would want to change or here, you could vote on that. You could make a motion to amend the item to, amend the ordinance to change that wording. It's not as strict in advertising prior to adoption as zoning is, so we won't have to go through that. The council can close the public hearing after tomorrow, or you could leave the public hearing open, and delay acting, and that would mean you could take more public comments on the day that you set to take action on the ordinance, so.
okay.
That last part I was gonna say. I mean, it's open to public comment tomorrow, and it's really, as long as you, if we don't take an official vote, you can leave it open for more comment, a longer comment period before you make a final decision.
Right, okay. All right, good to know. Thank you. Anything else? No, we'll consider a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.